In this week's podcast, I'm going to dive a little bit into the role and the power really that your mind has and the role your mind plays in fitness. Okay. And some other related topics. Right. So, first of all, how much do you think your mind plays when it comes, like, how much of it is mental versus just physical when it comes to working out, sports, whatever? What do you think? 10%, 20, 50 is a very common answer. How much do you actually train your mind versus train yourself physically? Then all of a sudden people go, oh crap, yeah, I just said it plays a 50% role. Some people even more than 50%. But the only thing they ever do as far as training is concerned is physical training. Nobody ever tries to train their mind. I bet most people don't really know how. Okay. Just some easy ways to show the power of your mind, right? Imagine you just cut into a lemon. You took half of it, you put it up to your mouth, and you taste the lemon. What's happening inside your mouth right now? You're salivating, right? You're creating spit. Your mouth is getting ready just from the thought of tasting a lemon. Your brain tells your mouth, get ready, lemon's coming, we gotta get ready. So you start to create it. Your body responds in a very physical way to just one simple thought. It's a very powerful tool that we could be using. A study that was done that got really popular was there were some basketball players, right? What they did, not basketball players, they're just groups of people and they had them play basketball. Okay. They were doing free throws, right? And they took three groups. They had one group, they tested them all to see how good they were. Then they split them into three groups and they took one group and they had them sit there and do nothing for the next week. They're not going to train whatsoever. The next group was going to train free throws. And the third group was led through like a visionary process where they're just training mentally only. So the only thing they're doing is being shown how to visualize practicing free throws. The group that did not practice or do any mental training whatsoever did not improve at all, as expected. That was a control group. And both of the other groups actually improved at about the same rate. I think that the people that actually practiced got a little bit, they both got better. I think the one that actually physically practiced got a little bit actually better than the one that only practiced mentally, but it was pretty close. The people that practiced only mentally through visualization got pretty close to the group that actually physically practiced. And our bodies get fatigued. And if you can improve through actual training and then go sit down and do mental training, you would have such an edge on other people. This is making me right now go, I need to get back to something I'm going to talk about on this. And I'll get there though. Before I get to that part, that it's the mental training that I did. Before I get to that, even when they hooked up some, I believe they were Olympic athletes, sprinters. It's an old video, late 80s, early 90s is when they did this. But they hooked these guys up to all these sensors that watch your body fire like neurological signals down your body. When they had these guys hooked up to these machines, they were detecting them. They could hook them up and actually have them run, and they see the path and the pattern that your muscles fire off in. They would then sit them there and have them just visualize themselves sprinting. The same muscles the monitors picked up, the same muscles are firing off. They're not actually moving. The legs aren't moving. They're just visualizing, but the same signal is being sent in the same pattern throughout their body. So some kind of physical change, some kind of physical activity at least, is happening through a visualization only process. It proved that the muscles, the signaling at least, is firing off in the same pattern, which is amazing. That's just amazing just to know. But then you go to the free throw where these guys are actually practicing, some guys are practicing and some guys are visualizing, and to show they both improved, that's phenomenal. That's really quite amazing to me. Let's real quick now go over my personal experience with this. Your mind is a hugely powerful tool. And I'd read about this stuff. I've probably forgotten more studies that I can remember that I could talk about right now, but I've read so many different things about this. And it just was interesting to me. At one of the strongest points of my life, the only change I made it was back in the day when I was doing a split routine, chest day, back day, whatever day. And every night as I was going to bed, I would sit down first, and whatever my next routine was the next day, I would go through it mentally. And I would actually visualize myself putting the weights on. I'd feel the bar, warm up a little bit. And then I'd visualize myself on my heaviest sets, loading the weight up. I would even put 2.5 pounds each side more. I would visualize myself increasing the weight, and I would see myself going down for the press and then pressing it up. I would visualize myself doing this, and my strength started going up. I would see myself doing it. I would see exactly how much weight was loaded up on the bar. I would see myself down and pressing it up like it was nothing. And I would just visualize my workout every time. So then if it was back day the next day, all the movements I did on back day, I would visualize it. If it was chest day, all the movements for chest day. Leg day, same thing. And I would see myself increasing the weight. I would feel the bar. I would see myself getting under it, unrack it, and go for my lift. And my strength just started to go up much more easily than it usually did. And it was profound to me. I think that just takes some time out of your day. At some point, I wouldn't spend long, maybe 15 minutes doing my visualization process, but I fall out of the pattern of doing stuff. But that makes me just really want to get back to it and just try it out again. Because right now, I'm stronger than I was back then, but I'm probably, because I try to keep my weight low-ish, a little bit weaker than I have been recently with my current workout. My current workout, I'm the strongest I've ever been in my life. But lately I don't allow myself to go too crazy on the calories unless date night, cheat day, whatever. But yeah, I think that maybe I'll get back to practicing some of this stuff, and you guys can too. And we'll see if we see improvements with this. But that's how I would do it. I would just visualize my workout, and you can do the same thing if you're doing my program. Make sure you do it for the 1 rep set. That would be the most important one to do it on, or any set you're struggling on. Okay. If you're doing my program, you know what I'm talking about. But just to show some other different ways the mind is powerful, there have even been studies, you can look any of this stuff up. There have been groups. These are always really interesting to me when I read about these. Okay. Essentially almost like prayer groups, right? Like a prayer group gets together and they think a certain thing. Okay. There's so many examples of them. One that I found particularly interesting, I think one of the first ones I ever read about, is a group that in a hospital, there were patients behind both doors, but these guys were in a different building, so behind both windows. So they were like told, okay, patient room right there, both suffering from hypertension. We want you guys in this other building across the street to all put your attention on that room right there, not this one where they both have hypertension, but this right here, and see that they pray for, give gratitude for this person's blood pressure lowering. We all want you to think this person behind this wall over here across the street, their blood pressure is lowering. And they would see actual changes to the one behind the wall where they're all thinking that thought process, all watching this person's blood pressure go down and stop suffering from hypertension. There's been groups like they would try to do, this was in Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza. He mentioned some groups that tried to pray for peace very intentionally for a certain area. And they would see that when they did this, terrorist attacks, certain things, just acts of violence, when this group did this very intentionally, there's a definite drop in it. And this has been repeated over and over. So now there's a lot of groups like this all working together to try to help make the world a better place, I think is the easiest way to say that. But it's really interesting stuff. So a lot of people, they'll meditate, and the whole point of that too is just sharpening your mind. Basically, your mind is always, whether people realize it or not, this has been studied as well, it's always going, for most people, like the vast majority. So every now and then I talk to someone, they're like, mine's not. And I'm like, it is. You just haven't noticed it. It's like a air conditioner that's been on your whole life. And until it shuts off and there's no noise, you're like, it's normal to you. But if it were to shut off, you'd go, oh my gosh, that sound is gone. Our minds are constantly talking to us. And when studied, science finds that 90-something% of it is just repetitive, unnecessary. And it's the goal of a lot of people who meditate. It's basically a lot of the great thinkers, which is funny, would say the only reason they are good at thinking was because of their ability to shut off thinking. Whereas everybody else is just like the constant blab that they can't get rid of. Einstein talked about this. Tesla talked about this, just to name a couple of really smart, wonderful thinkers. And the way you would go about meditating in this sense is the goal is to shut your mind off. The goal is you can do this a number of ways. You could pay attention to your breathing, because if you're paying attention to your breathing, your mind isn't running, right? You can only pay attention to one thing at a time. So if you're watching your breath as you breathe in and you watch your breath go down, fill your lungs, almost seems to fill your stomach, and then you breathe out, you watch the breath go back up, and you just pay attention to that, then your attention isn't on thinking anymore. Your mind isn't just mindlessly playing movies. If you just listen while you sit and meditate, if you just put your attention on any sound you hear around you, when you get really good at this, it shuts your mind off. And what's funny about it too is you learn that a lot of the sounds you don't like, you only don't like it because you have a mental judgment about it that you learned during this lifetime. And when you stop naming it, when you stop naming any sound around you, when you stop naming these things you hear, there's no good sound, bad sound, there's just sounds. When you're just listening, everything sounds pleasant. The first time I did that meditation, for 3 days afterwards, not a single sound bothered me. Stuff that usually drives me insane didn't bother me. And it's interesting. And you gain a little more control over your mind when you do these things. So your mind isn't constantly just blabbing nonsense or thinking about your past or thinking about your future or thinking about whatever. When you learn to calm it down, basically people who practice this say that you learn to use it more sharply. But Tesla and Einstein would both say, and a lot of people who meditate would say, that these great thoughts come from somewhere else, and the constant chatter of the brain blocks and prevents this. And so when you stop thinking, this great place where all this information comes from is opened up and more clear to receive signals, so to speak. And so Einstein was famous for saying, he's famous for lots of things, but he's famous for saying, I think 1,000 times and nothing, and then I swim in silence and the answer comes to me. So to practice this meditation, these types of meditations, what I will do on my website coming soon is I will do some guided meditations. I will just basically speak. You can just listen and you can follow along. And whatever I say, if I'm just breathe down and watch your breath, I'll do some stuff that's some ways to still your mind, but I'll post that to my website. I will also do a guided workout meditation, right? Like we talked about, like the guided workout stuff. So some visualization stuff that you just sit in a meditative position. You just sitting in a chair is fine. However you want to position yourself so you're just comfortable, and you can just relax, and we're going to visualize our lifting. Okay. And you can see if that helps, or you can try it on your own and see if that helps. But the basic premise is just to see yourself going down, up, and seeing yourself lifting more. And that is supposed to give some benefit, as I've experienced, to give some benefit to our ability to lift. Okay. Super, super, super interesting stuff. I love all this different ways to get stronger, and any edge we can get is cool to me, but it's just interesting that you can think your way to better health. You can think your way to strength. You can think all these different things that are beneficial. And also sometimes we don't realize there's this sort of sneaky thought saying that we're unhealthy, a sneaky thought saying we're weak, a sneaky thought saying anything negative. And when you realize that's happening, to catch it and shut it off, or just turn it around into something positive, can be a huge game changer for your life in general. All right. Okay. Till next time. Let me know how it goes with thought experiments. All right. See you guys.